Will there be famine on Earth? Will there be famine on Earth? Not if, but when. It's not supermarkets that feed the world, it's farmers, and farmers are being destroyed. A prophecy? Yes. Baba Vanga, Edgar Casey, Dolores Cannon, Monk Abel, they all said, the time will come when people will kill for a sack of grain. Not for gold, not for oil, but for water and food. What is happening right now? Farmers are being forced to shut down their operations under the pretext of a nitrogen footprint. 100,000 cows to the slaughter, fields being built over. The USA? Bill Gates has become the largest private owner of farmland. He bought more than 100,000 hectares. Why? He is actively investing in artificial meat. 3. Canada. Fertilizer restrictions. The harvest is falling. Farmers are being forced to close their farms under the pretext of nitrogen footprint. 4. Argentina, Germany, India. Mass protests by farmers. The answer is tear gas, freezing of accounts, arrests. Because control over food is control over the population. You won't be asking about your rights if you can't afford dinner. Hunger is a tool of control. And this has happened before. The Great Depression, Ukraine in the 30s, Mao's China, Ethiopia, Yemen. Lands with access to aquifers are being bought up by elites all over the planet. Plots near Baikal are no longer ours. Lakes in Latin America have been sold to Western corporations. Israel, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia are investing in desalination technologies and reservoirs because they know the next war will be over water. What should we prepare for? Have physical access to clean water, learn to grow at least a minimal amount of food, avoid relying on a single food source, create communities where there is knowledge, resources, and exchange, and store real seeds, not genetically modified ones. Study local wild plants that are edible. And remember, the one who can feed others is the one who will save them. A supermarket can disappear in a day, but the land will remain. And if you know how to work the land, you are free. But if you don't, you can be bought for a loaf of bread.
Listen, after hearing this video, it really seems like everything in the world is heading toward a point where money doesn't matter. And the one who survives won't be the one with money, but the one with a shovel and the knowledge of how to grow food. In general, how do you see this? Will something like this happen in our world?
I'll put it this way. Actually, I think all the subscribers of this channel know that usually for us, it's like down below, it says something like, it's going to be crazy, July will be a complete nightmare. And then in the actual video, I explained that basically, guys, calm down, relax, everything will be fine. Like, maybe it will be crazy. Yeah, but it's kind of like that, right? I mean, it's not total horror. It is just a bit of horror, you know, like a little light horror. We've looked into the future many times, and there will be some kind of story with hunger, some kind of story with food and water. As much as I would not want to say this, but on the horizon, you know, probably in 20 or perhaps 30 years, that's how I would put it. There will be some kind of story, especially in the world's poorer countries. That is, hunger will really intensify more and more. So where there is hunger now, hunger will get worse. Plus, some viruses might also have an impact. It's hard for me to say right now because when you look into the future is always shifting. That is, sometimes one path appears, then another, then a third, and everything gets mixed together. But every time that we have looked into the topic of hunger, there is always a response. There is always something, some kind of crisis, you know, food crisis like that. It is not really just hunger. It is more like food crises, which will hit, first and foremost, the poor countries. Which will hit the poor countries. Well, it is the same as it has always been, right? That is, the poor get poorer and the rich get richer. It's exactly the same here. It will hit poor and developing countries. It will hit arid and parched regions like these ones here. And it will hit, perhaps most devastatingly, some specific places that are, well, currently the least adapted for self-sufficiency. It's no coincidence, by the way, that Russia has now taken a very strong course towards self-sufficiency. Maybe the special military operation is part of it, yes, as one of the factors, but it seems like it's not just the special military operation. It feels like there's something else as well. As for Bill Gates, he knows a lot too. He is part of the highest and most exclusive elite circles in the world, right? And I would go so far as to say this: there will be a major food crisis after all. It is as if, you know, at this stage, there still isn't a comprehensive or clear understanding of the situation. And even the architects themselves do not possess even a remotely clear idea of just how much of a crisis to make it. I mean, is it really going to be a major crisis with a capital C? A crisis in huge, bold letters that actually shake on the screen so you know it's a serious crisis? Or is it just going to be a small crisis? written in tiny little letters at the very bottom, like that dense fine print in legal contracts that absolutely nobody ever reads. So there will be a crisis, but what kind of crisis it will be hasn't been decided yet. It hasn't been decided yet, but it will happen. It definitely will. Because again, the planet is rising in vibration and the architecture of the entire old world is changing dramatically. There will be significant major releases through a variety of different sources. For example, releases have already happened through illnesses, through the pandemic, right? And through ongoing war as well. There will also be releases through hunger.
The Four Horsemen, right?
Well, formally speaking, yes. I mean, I don't want to scare anyone here, but yes, in a sense, those very horsemen of the apocalypse will appear. So there will definitely be something related to hunger. But as for what exactly will happen, in reality, all the versions you see on the internet will only be just versions. Because again, no matter how many times we've looked at it purely, and our team is really focused on viewing things in a pure way, that is as distanced as possible from all egregores, because, well, again, we work with contact with the higher self in a pure state, precisely in a pure state, with maximum disidentification. And even for us, I can say this, you can't see it there, you can't see a clear branch. All those things people write to you in the comments, like the end of the world is coming tomorrow at noon, or I don't know, horror and utter disaster everywhere. Like Africa will drown, or I don't know, whatever else. Asia will drown, everyone will drown, only Russia will survive. Or the opposite, everyone will drown and only America will survive. It really depends on which side of the continent these guys are writing from, right? Basically, it's just a version, it's just one, let's say, of the placeholders that's hanging out there. So you connect yourself to the vast universal information base, and you see a certain placeholder that's presented specifically to you, depending on your affiliation with this or that egregore, country, nationality, and other similar factors. If you remove all the placeholders and look at it purely, the branch just hasn't been constructed yet. That is, there's a sense that yes, there will be hunger, but exactly what form it will take, how severe it will be. This specific global food crisis we are facing, right? What form it will eventually take is still uncertain and unclear. If it suddenly becomes clear, I'll record a review and update on this channel. So yes, subscribe to this channel. We record reviews here, including for each new upcoming month. So if it becomes clear, as they say, I'll definitely warn you about 6 months in advance. And then we'll all urgently buy up seeds. We'll purchase some seeds and gather plenty of shovels, stock up on necessary gardening equipment. I still hope that the crisis won't be overwhelmingly severe, but especially in poor countries, as I already mentioned, in arid regions, something like that can happen, yes.
In this video, there's a direct message that hunger is a tool of control. And how do you see this through?
Of course.
The higher self? Is there actually someone deliberately creating this hunger in order to control people later?
You see, here's the thing. After all, you want to control the living. If you happen to be the reigning king of a cemetery, that is certainly a very gothic and rocker-like vibe to have, yes.
Well, what I mean is that hunger causes fear, like the fear of being left without food, of living uncomfortably. And it's this fear that can be manipulated.
You see, let's take the pandemic, for example. I can see it absolutely clearly. We've already analyzed it, and I myself have had COVID several times. Yeah, I can say with absolute certainty that the pandemic was an artificial story. Artificial, 1000% artificial. At first, I thought about it this way and that, but then I really went in and looked deeply, truly through my higher self. And also, having personally gotten sick with this virus as if having come into contact with it myself. It was a purely artificial story. That is, it was truly a biological weapon that got out of control. And so here I have a question. Did it get out of control, or was it made to get out of control? That is, yes, it was deliberately let out of control. I tap into my higher self, I look at it from all sides, and it's 50-50 there. Well, I mean, on the one hand, it was supposed to happen. At the level of the architects, it was actually meant to get out of control, because those were certain rules of the game. Many souls actually came here specifically to play this coronavirus game. That's a whole separate topic, so we don't usually go that high up, right? But specifically at the elite level, well, there were certain powerful elites who were deeply interested. Those who wanted, for example, to launch all sorts of additional biometric passports, those who wanted to scare people so much that basically you'd be willing to get as many vaccinations as needed, as many of those COVID passports as they wanted. but just please let me out. Let me walk in the nearest park, buy QR code just to walk around to get some fresh air, right? So this is really a fundamental element of submission and total control. If, for example, a new pandemic starts again now, the WHO will have absolutely enormous influence, truly enormous and unprecedented power over everyone everywhere. They can say whatever they want, and people will do whatever they are told. So there were a variety of specific reasons for which all of this could be started in the first place. You could say it was actually a bit of psychological obedience training, right? It was training in, so to speak, the process of learning to yield and submitting to those in positions of higher authority. And what happened to those who were strongly opposed? They were fined, and quite heavily too. So yes, basically both the organizers and everyone else. And after that, everyone understood that, roughly speaking, if Big Brother says to do something, then you have to do it. And anyone who is against it will just be against it. That is basically the whole story. But on the other hand, at least from my perspective, this whole situation really spiraled completely out of control. They realized those individuals, there are still different active, groups of people involved. That is, there are different lobbies. It's like, basically in any government there are lobbies. And any law is always passed as a kind of counteraction between several interest groups, right? As they say, whichever one wins. It's the same thing here. So there are some guys who were in favor of this, but there are also guys who were strongly against it. You also have to understand that in the so-called world government, there isn't a clear, definite direction, like we're going this way. One powerful clan is for one thing, another rival clan is for something else, and a third, let's say, an alliance is for yet another thing entirely. Plus, you must realize they're all constantly at odds with each other. So it turns out that this so-called world government isn't really unified. That's it. And what am I getting at with all this? The point is, I have a very clear feeling that many people over there are holding their heads in their hands because things have gotten out of control. People started dying in droves everywhere, including those at the very highest levels. A great number of national presidents were essentially hunkered down and waiting out the pandemic in bunkers. And those same guys from these powerful clans fled and retreated as far away as possible. I just know this because I have certain contacts with some of them. During the COVID pandemic, they didn't even hold many meetings because they were simply quite afraid of getting infected. So basically things really got globally out of control there. What I'm getting at is that I think many people have come to realize that pandemics of this kind, even if someone ever wanted to control them, even if, let's say, it's some sort of test of obedience, it's far too dangerous even for the organizers themselves. Because, as they often say, there's no way out of a sinking submarine. We all live, basically in the same place. Yeah, and this virus is still out there spreading. So what am I getting at? What I'm saying is, if you try to extrapolate all this to hunger, if you try to create hunger, to organize it in such a way that it doesn't get out of control, so that, say, these people go hungry and those people don't, it's very difficult. Well, that is to say, it's really, really difficult. And I hope these guys understand that. Well, to be honest, at least some of them, I think, seem to understand this point quite well. Therefore, I really do not see any need to consciously organize hunger. Ooh. It will most likely be a natural consequence of certain energetic and socio-cultural causes. So basically, it's like the planet has entered some kind of crisis. A large number of fires, a large number of floods. So what do we see now in the summer? Here's summer in Moscow. Downpours from morning till night, temperatures around 30-something degrees, right? And every year it gets worse and worse. That is, the climate is really getting worse and worse. And it's like this all over the planet. Europe is over 40 degrees, like in Dubai, right? And I have a friend in Bali. He writes that they always had basically a wet season in January, February, and a dry one in the summer. But this summer, it's pouring rain. And it's pouring in Thailand. Well, in Thailand, that's kind of normal. It always rains there, right? But it's pouring in Bali too. So what I'm saying is basically there are more and more strange natural anomalies happening, more and more. And now meteorologists are warning us like, guys, get ready. Moscow is seeing tropical downpours with way more millimeters of precipitation than we usually see. 30 degrees Celsius is already becoming the new normal. So yeah, plus for us, it's like one moment it's 10 or 15 degrees, then suddenly it's 30 degrees. This is terrible for crops, for plants. So on the one hand, it's really cold, everything freezes, nothing grows, and then suddenly, bam, a wild heat wave. And on top of that, fires. Everything that managed to grow even a little just burns up. And if this begins to occur everywhere on the planet, it will inevitably impact everything around us. This affects, let's say, if the largest exporters, say, of wheat lose, for example, 70 to 80% of the world's wheat in some years, right? All of this will lead to a massive increase in absolutely everything that you could possibly imagine. That is, not only will the price of bread go up, but also the overall cost of every other product that is connected to it. Logistics will be affected too. Everything really will be impacted. And what if, at the same time, a war breaks out between China and Taiwan, for example? Then all the chips we currently produce, all the microcomputers, everything will collapse and everything will just come to a halt. It would be a complete collapse overall. So there would be no wheat and nothing to process it with either. And all the factories are becoming obsolete at a very rapid pace, right? So there's no computer equipment either and so on. So the point I am trying to make is that when we look at the reality of the situation, it is as if hunger could unexpectedly manifest itself in certain years, precisely as a result of a complex combination of sociocultural and energy factors. That is exactly what I am getting at. So it's not exactly a pre-planned action, but rather a consequence of this global crisis that our planet is currently experiencing and will continue to experience for about the next 20 years. I only see us coming out of this crisis in 20 or 30 years. It will be clearly visible then. That's more or less how I see it.
So what should we do if a real famine starts? If one year this whole scenario suddenly unfolds, what should people do?
First of all, look, if we're talking about Russia, I don't see a global famine happening in Russia. Not a truly global one. That is, yes, some prices will go up, some products might be unavailable, but not as harshly as, for example, in certain African countries or some countries in Latin America or some countries in Asia. I don't see that happening in Russia. That's the first point. Second, well, listen, growing something for yourself, growing something at all, but I'll say more. Again, what's worse here isn't hunger, but the panic that could start to be stirred up in the media, the prices that we could actually see, let's say, skyrocket. In fact, we are already beginning to see the first clear signs of this growing sense of hunger. For example, not long ago in Asia, the price of onions skyrocketed. They cost as much as an airplane wing. So something went wrong with onions over there. Onions suddenly became much more expensive. Not long ago, just a few short months back, eggs in America skyrocketed in price, I think by several times over. It got to the point where it was almost funny. You could even rent a chicken so it would lay fresh eggs for you. It was actually cheaper to rent a chicken than to buy eggs. Well, so these are basically elements of exactly what we're talking about right now. These are certain warning signs. That's why you need to adapt to the situation. That's one. And two, you need to work on your own psyche. I mean, in the end, hunger itself really isn't the worst part. If there are no onions or eggs, we'll just eat something else, right? What exactly will happen? Well, maybe we'll just end up growing something ourselves, right? What's scarier here is panic. Panic is much worse, because that's exactly when our higher self comes to the rescue, acting as the cheapest and best psychotherapist. You connect with your higher self and look into the future. You connect with your higher self and see exactly where your country is headed, where your specific region is going. Will this famine affect you personally or not? Do you actually need to spend money on those seeds or not? Maybe there will be enough of everything anyway. Oh, and so on and so forth. So, in other words, your higher self is like your personal analyst for your own destiny in the near future. It's simply the perfect option. And on top of that, it's also your own psychotherapist. That is, when you're really anxious, you connect with your higher self and there's harmony, bliss, relaxation, tranquility, everything is good and everything just feels great. Then you come back and it seems like you've let go of everything. Yes? So, in this regard, honestly, as they say, I would like to invite everyone to my group, which is starting in January. It's a special group for connecting with the higher self, including a course with individual guidance on connecting with your higher self. As of today, I believe this is truly the best path to yourself, to your own built-in psychotherapist, to your own built-in analyst, so that you can rely completely on yourself and not, as they say, on what is told to us through the mass media. For those interested, the school has been around for 12 years and the method has been thoroughly tested from every angle. There are tons of reviews, literally hundreds of testimonials from people. I'll be waiting for you at the links below this video, so come join us.
Thank you so much, Danila. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
My dear friends, For 10 years now, I've been teaching a course on the higher self for a Russian-speaking audience. During this time, about 4,000 to 4,500 people have passed through my school. I've been working on this topic for 20 years. Today, my school is one of the largest and most famous specialized schools for connecting with the higher self in the Russian-speaking world. And then I suddenly realized that it is finally time to reach out to the masses, so to speak. Yes, to the much wider world and to the incredibly vast expanse of the entire global internet. All the professional skills I have carefully developed, all the dedicated practices I have refined, and all the quick entries, thorough checks, and rigorous exams I have built over the last 10 years are now being brought to a truly global level. I now invite you to join a brand new, specially discounted group for the comprehensive Return to the True Self course, now available in English for students everywhere. 6 months of work on stopping the internal dialogue, working with blocks, and focusing on actually accessing the higher self. Answering both simple and complex questions regarding purpose, contact with God, and with the planet. Answering basically any questions on any topic, including work, relationships, and anything at all. Manifesting desires through the higher self, viewing past lives through the higher self, and everything that didn't fit into the first 5 months in a separate 6th one. And after that, you'll have the opportunity to join the alumni club, as well as the chance to continue your studies at the 2nd level of the school. The price for the discounted groups is discounted. You can find all the information about this below at the link under this video.